Thank you. Next will be Michael Dragun.
Good evening, everyone. As many of you may not know, some of you know, I was part of the first graduating class for Similar. Okay? Back then, there was 18 of us receiving ML/IR degrees. Things have sure changed. And I'm very impressed to see everyone that's interested in this major. It's very fulfilling. I'm very glad I did it. I've had a very successful career at it. I met my wife in this program. We've been married for 24 years. So it also can serve as matchmaking. Forget eHarmony, just come to class. I plan on doing something a little different. I wanted to share a success story with the company that I went to right after I graduated. I went on to what I call like my first real job with a major corporation. So what I want to say is when you're looking for a job, keep an open mind. Be open-minded. There's a lot to learn about everything. After graduation, I went up to the coal mining region in Pennsylvania where they told me there was no work. But there was a lot of work in labor relations. I had interviews with executives, with vice presidents, and also with a vice president of the corporate, in the corporate office for human resources. The company was established in 1880. It had a long history. They said it had a bright future. I like history. Let me take the job. It sounds like a really good next step. Okay? After I started, they said, well, you know, we have a little bit of a labor problem here. And I said, what's the labor problem? No one likes anyone. All right. So I had a challenge on my hands right out of the gate. Labor relations. Anyway, labor relations, excuse me if this is out, because this is meant to provide you important bullets, but this is meant to tell you a story, so you have a very practical example. To me, nothing was more frustrating than going to a conference, and then they would tell you these things, and you said, what does that really mean? Because it was too general. So I don't want you to walk out of here without actually having a practical example you could take to work with you. Okay? Labor relations. Labor relations is relationships. It's not accounting that they try to force every HR manager into being also an accountant. It's not. It's relations. Okay? So I'll say labor relations. I worked with an HR director. He was so despised at one time. There were so many grievances against him. They just completely made the person ineffective. He couldn't do any value-added work because he was busy walking through printing press after printing press, arguing with the employees, and nothing strategic was being done. Okay. I wound up at that company taking his place. They said, what do you know about the printing industry? I said, well, I had graphics in high school, but it doesn't matter. This company needs labor relations. Relationship building. It's transferable across all industries. Wait. So my first day on the job, I drive up and I see this parking lot. It's filled with pickup trucks. I had the only car. I thought, wow, you know. Yeah, right. It was not a Mercedes. It was a Subaru. But, then I had tours scheduled for myself. We took a tour of the factory. It was a cross between NASCAR and the Deer Hunter movie. The office was a cross between NASCAR and country music fans. There was a lot to learn. So, first thing I did, learn the business. Practice being a business partner before the term was fashionable. I learned the products, the markets, the suppliers, what impacts profit and loss. This company, we made water heaters. I learned the products of storage tanks, compacts, thermifics, gas-fired, oil-fired, steam-heated. We also made process equipment for the pharmaceutical industry. I learned about intensifier bars, dual cones. When patents come up with ethical pharmaceuticals, you run to the generic company and you sell them the exact equipment, because then they'll get quick FDA approval to make generics. So I was learning the business. Then you have to learn about the employees in the company. Employees love to talk about their jobs, and they like to show you what they do. It gives them pride. In my career, I ran a bulldozer. I'm a certified lift truck trainer. I have a colleague that ran a printing press and was showing me. I've flown a small airplane. I don't know if I say I'm right, my friend there. But I'm currently working as a Vice President of Human Resources and Safety Officer for New World Aviation. So this is completely different. You can't stop growing, is another thing I want to add there. Anyway, I've flown a $15 million S-76 Sikorsky helicopter. Fun fact, Igor Sikorsky is the father of the modern day helicopter. So in case you ever get a question on Jeopardy or something. So, doing all these things, what does it do for you? When you walk through and you talk to employees, it earns their respect. It gives you credibility. You have empathy for what they're doing. You're not just a suit sitting in the ivory tower. Okay? One example, and it also allows you to talk to upper management because you know firsthand about that job. If a worker walked off the floor and goes up to the general manager and starts complaining about his job, he's not going to get much attention, and especially in this company, he wasn't. We had workers putting tubes into what we called a thermific water heater. What they did was took a giant pipe wrench and walked in circles, in circles, in circles. You ever see Conan the Barbarian? It looked like that. And I was like, what's going on? Now, they wondered why they had workers' comp injuries for lower back, and you know what that does to your knees? Something like, so one of the first changes I made is we bought a power tool to perform that job. It was just like a giant ratchet that fit over the top of a pipe, and boom, it was pneumatic. Spun it right into the machinery. No walking around. Once you're in your company, you've got to find yourself a mentor. My first mentor was a vice president in the construction industry. In the Poconos, I found a divisional vice president that came to the company a lot, and he was the vice president of human resources. And you know, my biggest mentors after that were the employees themselves, the union workers, the shop stewards. I talked to them, they told me about the history of the company. I got an understanding. I had them explain to me why they unionized in the first place. What were your big problems? Now I have a mentor that's a chief pilot, and he's teaching me how to fly. It's important in your career, don't say no, especially to your mentor. Take on any work that's assigned to you. At least try it. If it's really lousy, you can back out. You know, but at least give it a try. And if you're not going to do it, you know, explain why it's not good for you. Stretch yourself, you know, and constantly do that. If you need more interesting work, go to your mentor. And while I was doing this, I accepted every assignment. My department kept growing. They assigned me the switchboard. They assigned me the mailroom. They assigned me the security detail. They assigned me the janitor. So all of a sudden, plus I had a benefits person and a human resources secretary. So suddenly I had a big department in about a year's time. I had another mentor that was from the corporate office, and talk about stretching myself. We went and we lobbied a U.S. congressman from our district where the factory was located for PNTR, which is permanent normalized trade relations with China. And I even met the Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, at this time. The reason why we did it is because we wanted to sell process equipment to China. These pieces of equipment go for $1 to $2 million each. China wanted to make vitamin C. Their economy was just starting to grow, and the tariffs were way too high. We had to reduce the tariffs so we can sell the equipment and keep people working. The congressman didn't realize this was going on in his district, and this was, the process equipment division was keeping 100 people employed. As a matter of fact, we wound up selling a piece of equipment to China, and they kept our engineer over for 3 days. We had to call the US consulate. They said either this works or you don't go home. So it was a little nerve-wracking. It was also a learning experience. 2 congressmen later came to our factory and took a tour. Be financially literate. You know, you don't have to be a CPA, but be financially literate. Learn your profit margins, okay? What does your profit or sell, you know, what does your product sell for? Know that. What is the cost per hour work? You're gonna need to know that, especially in collective bargaining. What are the relevant cost codes to your department and that affect you? You've gotta know this, you gotta speak this language so you can make an intelligent case in the language the CEO speaks. And why? Because you represent the people and you represent the company. You have to show you understand the company by understanding the finance. So to do this, I'm gonna find a friend in finance. Okay, mine was we had a senior accountant, was 35 years old. At this time I was 32. We both played ice hockey. And thanks to Mark Huslid, I don't know if any of you have had him as a professor, but I scored the highest on a test we had for accountants coming into the company. I actually beat the accountant applicant on the test score. We made it, and together we made a company spreadsheet before collective bargaining that was very specific to our company. We could put in anything and it would crank it out and we would know to the penny what that contract would cost us. Took a lot of work, but I had a friend in finance that taught me this. Another piece of advice I had: read again. The internet is a great advantage for today's employment relations and HR practitioners. Read what the workers are interested in. Walk through the cafeteria. Are there fishing magazines? I knew there were NASCAR magazines in this company. There were also hunting magazines, country music. Read it. And there's always audio books for your car if you want to learn more things. Get How Arbitration Works by Okori and Okori. This makes you look very good. It's an expensive book, but the union stores always have it, the lawyers have it, and they look like geniuses. You can get it yourself. And then when you go to a grievance meeting and you can quote that, they're like, ooh, who's this person? Who's this guy from New Jersey that just came up here? Okay? When you get to know the people, you have to know the executives, the managers, the clerical people, the shop floor people. Find the leaders in each area. There's leaders on the shop floor. They may or may not be the stewards, but the people look up to them and talk to them. Build a rapport with those people and you'll learn what's going on in that company. Okay? Talk in depth about their likes and dislikes. And does what the managers tell you match what the workers say? A lot of times it doesn't. You'll find the managers are much more positive. If it does what they tell you match the company's vision, if you have one? Identify those disconnects, work on solving those problems. Also, in addition here, this could be a good time. Survey the employees, find out the problems, work on those problems, survey them again for improvement, okay? I like to break problems down to a couple categories. Are they processes, people, or equipment? In the Poconos, it was clearly people. Okay, they did not trust management. They felt management did not give a darn about them. I mean, be adaptable. Have a sense of humor. Did anyone see The Imitation Game? All right. Was it John Turing or what?
It was Alan.
Alan, thank you. Who was from that college down the road, Princeton. But anyway, he had tremendous information, but he had a tough time getting along with people. So he went in on the one scene, he hands everyone an apple, and he says, really awkwardly, there's two men camping, and a bear comes, and the one man runs and puts on his sneakers, and the other fellow says, what the heck you doing? You'll never outrun a bear. And he awkwardly says, yes, but I only have to outrun you. Okay. Every day I would go to the shop floor for a coffee. I learned about hobbies of people. I learned who was open to sharing, what the supervisors were like. And sharing is a learned behavior. I don't know if you heard of the Johari window. It's very simple. It sounds complicated, but it's literally two gentlemen named Joe and Harry. We're sitting at a bar. They're human resources people. They are not Asian. They're two United States human resources people. And what they say is there's things that you know about me that I know you know. I'm wearing a suit of questionable quality. I know you know that, because I can see that. But there's also things you know about me that I don't know. That there could be a coffee stain on the back of my jacket. You're ever driving down the road, people are flashing their headlights at you. You know, what could that be? They obviously know something you don't about you, right? Could be your headlights are off, okay? Anybody have any other ideas? Cop up ahead. My favorite could be my coffee cup I left on my roof. Okay. So that's the Johari window. The idea is the more you open that window to people, the more they can see and hear about you. You can find common ground to build your relationship. So find common ground, my next point. There was a Flyers fan that was an ex-shop steward. He knew I liked hockey and I was a New Jersey Devils fan. So he bet a coffee for a whopping 20 cents in the cafeteria every game. And religiously, I think I won 5 in a row, religiously he'd bring me down the cafeteria and buy me a cup of coffee. But the point was just, I wasn't getting the coffee. Then I'd be in the cafeteria and we'd have some chit chat, okay? There was another example, an ex-shop steward was always wearing a Dale Earnhardt hat. So I used the Joe Harry technique. I said, do you like Dale Earnhardt? I said, yeah, I don't know much about this NASCAR. I said, but I grew up in New Jersey, right down the street from Raceway Park, okay? And he goes, Raceway Park, drag racing. I owned a car there called Yellow Fever. You really went to Raceway Park? Boom, we're friends. We had a report. Later on, he was voted shop steward right before negotiations. What a lucky break that was, okay? This all takes time. You're gonna need a good staff or outsource some things to free your time up. Like I said, do this, build these relationships. If somebody has a legal question, look it up on the internet. Get yourself some kind of, like the Corey, and surround yourself, with competent people. Why? How are you going to get promoted if there's nobody to take your place? Right? So don't be afraid of that. Look for aptitude and look for attitude. Those are the two most important things. Lead by example. If we don't follow the policy, you cannot credibly enforce it. And be a compassionate watchdog, right? Nobody likes heavy-handed people, okay? You're ready to call Sally in, because now you have to enforce a rule, okay? Sally's been missing a lot of time from work. Sally, this is Mike Dragun. Do you come down to my office for a second? Sure, I'll be right there. Sally walks in and says, boy, am I glad you called me. You know, my wrist has been killing me for a long time. I think I might have carpal tunnel. And my mother, she's not taking this well. I think she's fallen into depression. My son, he's been using my pain medication. He's addicted and he's gonna have to go to rehab now. What was it you wanted to talk to me about? Now you think you're trapped, because what do they have? Workers' comp, ADA, and FMLA. Well, you're not trapped. That was up to them to report that before you. So what do? You follow through. As long as you have your documentation in order, your warnings, you follow through. You should always have a policy to report workers' compensation injuries as soon as possible. If someone's cut, take them to the hospital. You don't want them bleeding on the report form, because then you have to have bloodborne pathogen training and everything. No, take them for treatment when necessary, then have it filled out, okay? I had another example of a person sleeping on a job, but if you have a person that's a long-term employee, just say, but for you being a long-term employee with an impeccable record, you would have been terminated. This saves you from a short-term employee doing something bad. Weed out the heavy-handed supervisors. How do you do that? I would call them in and start asking about all the people that reported to them. And what happened was, this one gentleman, he didn't have a clue. And what does that mean? He has no relationships, no common ground. He didn't like his employees. They didn't like him. He didn't last long, okay? So I had to match the hiring to the company strategy, all these bad attitudes. Everyone that came in, I had to make sure they had a very good attitude, a positive attitude, okay? Then we needed to sell engineering services. I had to find engineers that didn't want to sit in a cubicle, but were rather outgoing, so they can go talk to customers, okay? For employee engagement, we sent senior managers out to tour the shop on a weekly basis, and they had to report back on an employee they met and talked to. I even had a sales manager get married to a supervisor. Okay. And last, we had birthday breakfast with the general manager, coffee talk in my department, sent 2 supervisors, 2 shop stewards to overcoming negativity. They came back with rubber bands on their wrists, and every time they got mad at each other, they'd run up and snap each other's rubber bands. Those guys got to be great friends over time. Breaking down barriers with donuts. I'll make this my last thing. Just trying to do things that I remember. Okay, who was the first person to arrive here today? No, besides.
Yeah.
Anybody remember? Okay. Now, can you imagine the company, you feel as though the company does not appreciate you. We've been really pushing safety, and we set a safety record for the first time in 28 years. We went 250 days without a lost time accident. So, all of us senior managers, at my urging, went out to the parking lot at 6 in the morning, and we met the employees as they got there, the very first employee, and we handed them out donuts and coffee on their way in. They couldn't believe it. That went a long way. And of course, after we set records, they expected them. And then later on, things got so well with this company, the media took notice, the newspaper came in and took a picture of us celebrating a safety record that had gone up to 2 years at this time. And I just want to say, this company was so good, they even had a 2-tier wage system. But by the time I was gone from there, the 2-tier wage system in 2 contract negotiations, we eliminated. Mutual gains bargaining. They wanted some extra money, we instituted profit sharing. And we gave raises to the lower tier until it evened out. And I learned mutual gains bargaining from my mentor, Bill Dwyer. Okay? So there's some tips I hope you can use. It's not hopeless when you walk into a seemingly hopeless situation with labor relations. And no matter where you go, it's relationship building, folks. If people like you, they're going to work hard for you. Okay?
All right, Mike.